Hi everyone, and welcome back to Automotive Logistics and Supply Chain Europe Live. I'm Christopher Ludwig, Editor-in-Chief here at Automotive Logistics. Driving digitalization in the supply chain is, of course, a key objective across Europe's OEMs and providers, and perhaps few areas is the potential for gain as great as for outbound vehicle logistics. In fact, at our virtual conference last September, Volvo Cars' Martin Corner, Head of Supply Chain Management, and who will join us tomorrow to round out the conference, challenge logistics operators, especially in the vehicle logistics sector, to, quote, get out of the Stone Age and into the digital age, to be ready with agile processes, connected systems, higher visibility, and greater flexibility. Well, in this session, we want to demonstrate where vehicle logistics providers are indeed up to the task, and perhaps also where they're ready to challenge the manufacturers on where they also need to step up to better gain from digital tools and processes. Before I bring on our first expert guest, let's kick you off again with a poll question. So just a reminder, you're in the main stage, right there onto your right, you will see the poll option. So if you click on the poll, you should now see it visible. And the question is, which area of finished vehicle logistics currently has the biggest opportunity to improve efficiency through digitalization? Is it transport network design? Is it freight and carrier purchasing? Is it yard and compound management, invoicing and payments, or track and trace visibility? Vote on that now. And of course, if you disagree with any of these options, let us know in the comments and kick off discussion that way. So we're going to leave that poll open for you to vote for a little while, so to gather some responses. And whilst you're voting, let me introduce our first guest of the session. Happy to be joined by Johannes Koch, finished vehicle logistics expert at software as a service provider ICL Systems. Johannes has joined the company with extensive experience from both the OEM and provider side, and is helping to drive the company's vehicle logistics business and systems right here in Europe. Johannes, so good to have you with us.
Thanks a lot for having me. Thanks a lot.
It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. Johannes, as I kind of alluded to in my opening statement there, the finished vehicle logistics sector can sometimes be accused of some stagnation, especially when it comes to technology. Some saying processes, assets, some cases even IT systems for decades. What's your view here? How has or hasn't the vehicle logistics industry changed over the past couple of years?
Well, so when I was preparing for this panel, I was thinking, what value can I bring to such a great audience? And you already referred on it in the beginning. I think I can view at the topics from different perspectives, as I have an experience working for the LSP side, the OEM side, and now for a software provider side. So coming back to your question, I've seen quite a lot of older or outdated systems out there. Some of them are even 15, 20 years old, or some even older. So that makes it quite challenging, because everyone wants to have flexibility. In times of COVID, for sure, we all want to have flexibility, but not just COVID. If we have, for example, every year these recurring new EU emission standards, that often leads to a shortage on storage. So we really need flexibility within the whole industry. And everyone is aiming for supply chain resilience to adapt or to cover those challenges. But besides that, there's a growing amount of EVs and PHEVs that we're transporting. So those EVs are heavier. So we really need to work on our network design. And a third point I would like to mention is this consumer trend. Lots of companies and people out there are asking us, why can we track a pair of socks if we order it, for example, from Amazon, but why can't I track my 70,000 euro car?
This is the perennial question, and I think one, especially in times of COVID, which comes to the fore even more now that we were ordering virtually everything online. Do you see us at the sector at something of an inflection point? Is the change that we've long been hoping kind of now arriving over the next few years?
Indeed, I think so. So I think this change already started within the last year during this whole pandemic. So, but especially in the next 5 to 10 years, customers will expect more and more this Amazon style experience. So growing need for visibility. And as I mentioned before, there will be much more EVs on our transport devices. So we need a better network efficiency. And last but not least, what we already had a few times today in the sessions before is the topic of sustainability and reducing emissions. I mean, in times of COVID, that topic might be a bit off, but I'm pretty sure that latest after this whole crisis is over, this will come back even much harder.
Timely there. I think we saw some statistics just today, in fact, that 2021 will probably see the greatest increase in emissions for decades as a result of coming out of lockdown. So I don't think there's any doubt that this is going to play a bigger role. In fact, as you know, we've been already talking about that with a number of providers, a number of companies throughout this session. Let's turn a bit to end-to-end visibility, perhaps alluding back to your earlier point, the so-called sort of Amazon effect or question, which we often see lacking in the vehicle logistics total supply chain. Where do you see the biggest barriers right now to achieving this across vehicle logistics? Is it in the production schedules? Is it in the yards, in the compounds, transport, all of the above? How do you see it?
Well, I think the most important challenge is what I already mentioned before, is kind of outdated or older systems. They make it much more difficult to exchange data effectively. We have last year introduced the new VDA, ECG, and ODAT standards. They already make it much easier to exchange data. But as we all know, those standards are not always that easy to adapt, and some companies take a bit longer for that. So it's really a challenge to have this frictionless information exchange. And in the end, you can have a perfectly advanced production system if your logistics system, IT system, is not up to date. That doesn't help.
Okay, so legacy systems are one of the key barriers here to bringing this all together. Just a quick follow-up on that point. I mean, do you see that on the OEM side, as you've worked across both, do you see those system issues on the OEM side or on the provider side, or a mixture of both?
I think it's a mixture of both. Some companies, they already understand that quite well. So some already invested a lot in new systems, and I think this new effort you will really see in the next years. It will be kind of a competitive advantage.
Okay, great. And is that? I mean, I wanted to say what the biggest specific challenge for an individual company like an OEM or a provider would be in having that visibility. Again, would you also say it's the systems, or is there other issues at play here too?
So, I mean, everyone is collecting data. LSPs are collecting data, OEMs are collecting data, pretty much everyone in the whole supply chain. So there's plenty of data out there. But I would say the challenge is how parties share the data and effectively use it, because it doesn't help if you have tons of data, but if you're not sharing them and not use the data, it's not a real benefit. So another challenge I see is that everyone wants to have that full visibility, but up to now, not all parties are interested in sharing all the details. So I think we really need to agree on a certain framework or standard how to exchange the data in the whole industry.
Okay, well, that's an interesting point. I think we'll probably pick some of it more up in the discussion later, because as you mentioned, systems on the one hand are an issue, but perhaps then even updating and using the latest technology, whether it's telematics or other, won't necessarily help you if we're all sharing different data or don't have a way to share it, or a common way to share it. I think that's quite an important point. We'll talk about a bit later. Before we kind of end our warm up here and move to Renatas, tell me a bit about the roadmap in your view. How do we go about addressing some of those challenges you laid out? How can the FEL industry, what should it change first, most critically, and what are the steps to follow?
So I think there are two very basic steps. We need to get away from paper-based processes and from Excel-based processes. So sharing data, Excel files and so on by email, sending them around, that's neither effective nor secure. So we really need to find a way not to work on paper or Excel-based processes. So I think key is that OEMs and LSPs invest in their logistics systems if they want to deliver this Amazon experience to their customers.
Okay, so that's a very clear starting point. I think that's a good note to kind of kick off our discussion. Why don't you stick there around there 1 second, Johannes? Let's turn to the poll and let's just look at what the results of that poll were. To a reminder to anyone who's just joining us, click into the poll section to your right, and then you'll find the question: which area of finished vehicle logistics currently has the biggest opportunity to improve efficiency through digitalization? If you haven't voted, please take another 5 seconds here just to let us know. And otherwise, I'm going to close it now and share the results. And as we can see here, it's a pretty wide lead for track and trace visibility. 43% think it's track and trace is the biggest area of opportunity. 26 to 27% said transport network design, and then it was a bit split between some of the other ones. So there's still a little bit of movement on that even as we speak, but track and trace coming out the clear winner there. So visibility, perhaps not as surprising, but I think kind of confirming some of the things we were just talking about there, Johannes. Johannes, you'll join us again shortly. I'm happy to bring on Renatas Slenderis, who's the founder and CEO of Fracht SIA. Renatas helped to pioneer a collaborative platform to book and manage finished vehicle freight, and he certainly has some strong perspectives on which direction the industry needs to go to digitalize further. Renatas, great to have you with us. Oh, Renatas, just you want to unmute yourself there.
Hello, good afternoon to everybody.
Yeah, there you go. Over to you, Renatas. We'll hear from you, and then we'll join you for Q&A afterwards. Over to you.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us today as we discuss the future of finished vehicle logistics, examining the state of the current market for OEMs and the benefit of our innovative solutions to help streamline transportation processes, helping to save you time, money, effort through LCS platform and with the help of e-forwarding solution. Digital tools can enable better decision-making and faster responses, ensuring lower lead times, increased quality, and will help to elevate transport bottlenecks in the future. Digital tools can enable a proactive and flexible approach to refining networks, improved communications and collaboration, crisis and capacity management, forecasting, schedule adjustments, understanding supply chain KPIs, inventory position, and managing effectively systemized procedures. The market is changing rapidly. However, the strategies employed by many OEMs in the automotive logistics sector has not evolved since the beginning of the finished vehicle logistics. During recent years, a trend has emerged of OEMs trying to cooperate with as many direct service providers and carriers as possible. This step has been welcomed. However, with this change has came new challenges. More suppliers mean more communications, such as emails, phone calls, making it more difficult to react swiftly, receive timely responses, control quality, manage lead times, deliveries, finance, and other business processes related to the transportations. OEMs today predominantly use two strategies: regular contracts and spot sales in case of fluctuations and emergency. It is worth remembering that in general, those strategies are used not to control transportations, but suppliers who provide services. At the same time, a third strategy exists, which is directly focused to control transportation business processes. It has not been used by OEMs to date and was left for suppliers and forwarding companies, as this has been considered too difficult. I understand the reason behind this. Execution transportation business processes on a daily basis is a complex affair. Create requests, receive offers, negotiate, create orders, clear the flows, optimize transportation routes, plan and manage the trucks, communicate with drivers, compounds, dispatchers, mark loading, unloading, track transportations, issue an invoice, make payments, and other operations. This takes hours and requires staff with specific skills. Challenges with existing OEMs strategies leads to higher transportation costs, as OEMs contracting Tier 1 suppliers, Tier 1 subcontracting Tier 2 suppliers on average in 50% of cases. This leads approximately a 7% increase on the price. Lower truck utilization, increased empty miles, higher CO2 emissions. Tier 1 suppliers today don't cooperate to decrease empty miles. If supplier A has flow from Poland to Spain and supplier B from Spain back to Poland, they will not pair the flows with each other. Expectations that Tier 1 suppliers will cooperate is less than 20%. As well, a lack of visibility on flows and manual operations are limiting factors to securing the most suitable solutions. Low transparency. Tier 1 suppliers don't have GPS data connection with Tier 2 and are not able to share real-time assets and location and data of deliveries to the customers or with the compounds. As well, decreased control on supply chain management. Communication with Tier 2 suppliers through Tier 1 suppliers decreases reaction time, transparency, visibility, control, and efficiency. And higher lead times. A lot of trucks today have 2 drivers on board, and they are used not for non-urgent transportations, not for shuttle transportations or transportations where the compounds is open 24 hours, but in areas where the suppliers is able to receive the loads. Manual operations and the lack of data exchange are key disadvantages. In 2009, I challenged myself to create a platform for automotive industry based on digital collaboration, communication, connectivity, transparency, visibility, control, efficiency, CO2 reduction, and cost savings with the help of synergy and standardization. Now, after more than 10 years of research and development, we have created a platform that already connects more than 1,100 carriers, telematic, GSM, routing and other service providers, allowing OEMs to use a new strategy, e-forwarding, and execute transportation business operations in less than 3 minutes with push a few button help. Can you imagine manage spot sales, orders, or pay the flows of deliveries in real time, assign them to the trucks, exchange this information with drivers, compounds, dispatchers in seconds? No language barriers, monthly invoices created in less than a minute without needs for audit, automated payments, being able to complete thousands of transactions in minutes. Our e-forwarding system was designed for OEMs as an alternative to forwarding companies, as forwarding with outdated manual methods does not facilitate optimal efficiency, leads to empty miles and excessive CO2, as well as failing to improve truck utilization. Digital solutions can execute real-time flows optimization tasks better than outdated manual methods. Today in the market, I see very huge interest from OEM for solutions to reduce CO2 emissions in finished vehicle logistics. By using e-forwarding, OEMs can reduce road transport emissions up to 80% by 2030 compared to levels recorded in 2019. Main function of e-forwarding are rent the fleet, pair the flows in the real time, optimize transportation routes, and manage the trucks in an automated way, including communication with drivers, compounds, dispatchers, and other parties related to the transportations. This can improve truck utilization and reduce empty driving CO2 emissions at least by 15%. E-forwarding supports as well fast implementation of green logistics by speeding up deployment of low-emission alternative energy in road transport. Our own survey data based on our network shows that 80% of carriers, if contracted with an existing fleet rental contract, are ready to invest in alternative drives such as LNG, CNG, and other. E-forwarding allows you as well to calculate the exact amount of CO2 emissions on load transportation, including empty miles and not from point A to point B. With the cooperation from thousands of companies through e-forwarding, the operational side of business processes appear as if working with one large service provider, and this supports greater competition. ALSS is the real-time innovative solution to your transportation needs, and if you wish, you can download the full presentation from eBoot, or if you have some questions, please contact us for more information. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Renatas. Again, interesting to get a sense of both the history of why you created this platform, and of course understanding the dynamics that go into it. That's I think another useful framing for our discussion. Let's bring Johannes back into the conversation as well for our Q&A round. Our audience, please put your questions through as well, and I will feed them to our experts. But I wanted to actually start a little bit with some of the current disruptions that, of course, the industry continues to face in the aftermath of COVID, semiconductors, etc. From the finished vehicle perspective, how can OEMs best position themselves to mitigate this in future? And Johannes, maybe I'll start with you there.
Well, in the end, that's pretty hard to predict because any disruption might be different. And if I would know that, I would be a prophet. But from my point of view, the best way is by gaining a full picture of your supply chain. So having a flexible tool to handle all new processes and to adapt to new changes in the supply chain quicker.
Renatas, would you add anything to that in terms of the view that you're getting across the network from your company and the systems that you're using?
I think it's one of the advantages of e-forwarding solution, that you can use centralized and decentralized system at the same time, and this brings you to the new level.
Okay, yeah, and one thing, Renatas, I wanted to ask you about, and it's an interesting feature of the system. You're talking about matching carrier availability, freight demands, pairing loads. Do you rely on real-time availability of transport and freight to do that, or is that relying on another process?
ALSS platform allows to use several options. One of them is to share the flows and tracking capacities between customers tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers to allow them easier optimize transportations, find backflows, and reduce empty miles. And the second one is focused on some specific customer or supplier demand and allows to pair transportation flows, taking into account real-time data about the truck positions, available flows, and data.
And Johannes, I wanted to ask your view on the reducing empty miles. This is something that comes up, has been mentioned already today. In fact, it's also considered an important way to address the sustainability issue. How do you see as the best means to reduce it? Is it technology, visibility? Is it collaboration, or other aspects in the relationship to change that?
Well, I think it's a mix of both. So we need digital solutions kind of as the basis for effective collaboration, because just if we all work effectively together as an industry, OEMs, LSPs, service provider, software providers, and we can really reduce the supply chain emissions. So we need to see our IT systems, doesn't matter which ones, as kind of a communication hub between all the parties involved.
So one of the things, Renatas, that you mentioned in your presentation, we're talking about automating processes, and I wanted you to, can you tell us a little bit about what you see as the most important finished vehicle logistic processes that should be automated?
Definitely dispatching. Definitely dispatching, because it's these processes are connected with the rest functionality, and with the rest processes as compounds, as claims handling, compounds management, and the rest processes, communications with drivers, communications with customers. So dispatching the right data to the right persons on the right time is the most important.
Okay, and Johannes, what about from your side? I mean, we talked right in the beginning about going paperless for some areas to in effect automate that process. But there are other things you think we should be focusing on?
So I think that's quite a good point to go back to the poll, because I was quite surprised that track and trace and visibility is that far ahead of the rest. So I would say I agree with this about 27% that transport network design is very important as well. But I would have expected that invoice and payment is important as well, because I think there is a large potential to reduce costs.
That's okay. So that's a good point. And maybe Renatas, you want to comment on that, because freight and audit payment was something you were highlighting in your presentation as well. What should the industry be doing to make this process more efficient?
If you can handle all the information which are connected directly with the transportations, it means that you don't need to create invoice from Excel files, but you can create invoices from data collected with data collected from drivers, dispatchers, transport managers, compound employees, claims handling departments, and the rest. So it means invoice physically, it's end of result of all those processes.
Absolutely. I totally agree with Renatas. From our experience, it's kind of impossible to audit all the invoices that are coming in. So it's massively manual work. And with a digital tool or e-invoicing, you can check about 100% of your invoices. And from our ICL experience, we can say that you can save about roughly 4% of your freight costs if you use an electronic payment tool.
4% of total freight costs, of total vehicle logistics freight costs.
Today, because we have all the data in digital form from any persons related to the transportations. For us, finance is totally automated, and as well as payments. So based on our experience, there is no needs any audits, any double checks, because you can trust on such invoices, as data in the invoice appear not from the sky, but from different persons and different departments.
So we're pretty agreed that the 1% or 2% vote there was underestimated. In fact, as we've learned, people can probably save double that percentage alone. So hopefully that moves up the priority list. Clearly, another thing we've been talking a lot about already in the sessions today also is sustainability. We addressed it as well, Johannes, a bit in our opening questions. We're looking at goals for reducing emissions 50% in some cases by 2030, maybe even 100% net carbon zero in the next decade, in the 2030s. But when you look at the data, and both of you are in a position actually across the networks you're interacting with to, I'm sure, see a lot of data, how much of a challenge for finished vehicle logistics will it be to meet those sorts of targets from what you see right now? I'm going to start with you, Johannes.
I think we have quite ambitious targets, what is good. And I think lots of people think we are on the right way. But if you listen to researchers, then that's not that clear. So as we all know, our global production is slightly decreasing for the last 2-3 years, especially last year with COVID. But some people say that the transport volume is still going up due to new formats of owning a car, such as leasing or subscription, etc. And what we already mentioned in the beginning, EVs are much heavier. So in the end, we need more trucks to transport the same amount of cars.
So quite a few challenges coming, just even in the structural transition of the industry. Renatas, what about from your point of view? How difficult will it be to so radically reduce transportation emissions, and what are the key barriers?
Today I am in contact with 100 companies on daily basis, and I had a lot of negotiation with suppliers on this topic. The main problem today in the market that carriers receive a contracts, quite a yearly contract or for 2 years contract, and all optimization are left for carriers. But if you will ask carrier what they want to do, they want to give the truck driver, they are ready to invest to the trucks with alternative drivers. But the management of those trucks should be done by the customers, because customers have better visibility on flows. They can better to deploy those trucks, and if customer can have full control on those trucks and share at the same time this data with supplier, both sides will be happy. So there's needed to change a little bit strategy and not use only the contracts with price type per transportation or per vehicle, and leave the rest operations for suppliers, but OEM should more participate in management and motivate the carriers to invest to alternative drives. And this can change the situation quite fast, and results could be visible very fast.
So that's interesting. So then there needs to be a change in both helping the providers to support investment, but also in letting them to optimize aspects of the route. Well, firstly, let's talk a bit about how we're measuring these emissions in vehicle logistics. From your point of view, if a finished vehicle, are companies using an agreed standard? And if not, what should it be? Or is there any progress in establishing one? Johannes, what about maybe from your side?
So I would like to add a point to your last question, because it's, I think, key for the next question now. What I see as the biggest challenge is not calculating emissions. That's in the end pretty simple math. But to get precise data from a reliable source and to agree on a standard, that is the real challenge. So coming back to your question, for logistics in general, there are quite a few frameworks and methodologies. So there's, for example, the GHG protocol, the DIN EN 16258, and based on that, pretty famous at the moment, the GLAC framework. So I think there's a pretty good basis, but that's all more designed for general freight. So I think we need adjustments for the finished vehicle logistics industry. And up to now, as far as I know, we haven't agreed on a standard for the FVL industry. So we need to find a common standard, probably based on the GLAC or one of those other frameworks, to support benchmarking, and especially to make it easier for the LSPs and all the other parties to report the emissions to the OEMs.
Okay, so absolutely some work to be done there. Renatas, do you see digital tools playing a specific and key role in reducing emissions here? What role do you think they should be playing or can be playing?
I think that digital tools is the main key and the tool to manage this processes and go direction to reduction. Because we should change a little bit, use the strategies today as previous strategies already many years are used, and we see that there is no changes year by year. Almost I'm in finished vehicle logistics almost 20 years, but I can tell even today I don't see no difference between processes what it was when I came to logistics and what we have today. It's we stuck on the same strategies. We should start to think a little bit different. And digitalization can open for us new opportunities, because this could help us to share more easily data. We can work. We can cooperate decentralized. But if we speak about CO2 reduction, so we can implement additional centralized system which can manage different connections between different flows, and at the same time to reduce CO2.
So yeah, as you mentioned earlier, I think that pairing of loads, reducing empty miles, using the visibility and tools to network to do that. Would you add anything to that, Johannes?
So I agree with Renatas. I would add one point. So I think digital tools can really, again, help to get rid of manual processes. So many OEMs, LSPs are still calculating their emissions more on a manual basis. But with a good tool, you can automatically calculate the emissions as kind of a side product, and no extra work is involved.
I want to turn to, there's a question from the audience here. I think going back to our points earlier on reducing empty miles, and actually the audience would like to know if anybody has any statistics on empty mileage in finished vehicle logistics. You know, is it from the data that you've seen, is it 20%, 30%, 40%? Maybe I'll start with you, Renatas. Do you have any sense from the networks that you're working with what that rate looks like?
It depends on the season, but in some cases it reaches even 40%.
Up to 40%. So there's a big number screaming right at us as a pretty important place. And obviously, if that can be reduced, there's almost a direct reduction.
Depends, because if all flows using as normal are moving as normal, then empty miles decreasing. But if there appears some production stops in east or in west, then those empty miles increasing drastically, and on the end we have very poor results.
This was in one of our poll questions earlier as well, around alternative fuels, CNG, biofuels, etc. This seems to be one of the bridge technologies, or let's say the paths to sustainability. How feasible is it for a more mass rollout of such alternative fuels for, let's say, the commercial trucking sector over the coming years? Johannes, is this something that you'd want to comment on?
So I think that's still a challenge for the industry, because alternative fuels are still more expensive than fossil diesel. And as we all know, the margins in road transportation are pretty low. What I would see as a positive side on most of these biofuels, that you don't need to buy new trucks, and you can already significantly reduce the emissions. For example, if we take this B100 first generation biofuel, if I remember correctly, the emissions can already be reduced by roughly 60%, and according to the GLAC framework, on 45% on average. And HVO, so second generation biofuel, that's currently not available in whole Europe, but there is potential to reduce emissions by up to 90%, and I think about 64 according to the Black framework. I mean, in the end, that has pitfalls as well. So if you don't produce the biofuel in a sustainable way, it's not sustainable in the end. So we have to take care of that as well.
Yeah, and as you say, it needs to be available as well. If it's not available, it won't. So Renatas, I mean, I believe also that some data you've looked at as well in terms of making fuel stations visible for this. How available are these sorts of fuels currently for carriers?
Today, we understand that the green energy have some costs, and as example, I can give you one example. If you want to use LNG or CNG truck, the driver is losing almost 3 days working hours because you are spending 1 hour to take gas, and who should pay for this process? Because you should take gas daily 1 time. This takes about 1 hour. So we have monthly 23 hours. It means that the driver is filling fuel 23 hours and is not driving. So we understand that the costs will rise if we want to achieve a green strategy. But it is possible as well to, first of all, to deploy trucks with green energy in short distance transportations or transportations where you should allocate vehicles in close distances. As example, you are loading the vehicles in the compound and you should deliver them inside some region. Then those trucks are useful. For international business, in the few coming years, I don't see a huge opportunity for LNG or CNG. But I hope that in the coming few years will appear trucks with electro drives, and they will help to change the situation in general.
So you see electrified trucks in the coming years as a bigger solution. How about you, Johannes? Do you think the electrification of the truck fleet will be key in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think so. So on a short and even on a midterm basis, I think that's more a solution for the last mile. So if you have low emission zones, then that's perfect. But I think in the longer term, I agree that it's definitely a solution.
Right, well, we're coming up. We've got about 2 minutes left, so let's kind of finish with. We obviously been talking about sustainability. What's the most important change the Finnish vehicle logistics industry needs to make to achieve or get on the right path, get back on track to meeting these sustainability targets? Renatas, let me start with you.
Closer cooperation between customers and suppliers. Closer cooperation because today we see, as I told before, yes, expectation that tier 1 suppliers will cooperate with each other is not higher than 20%. It's even I am surprised on such results.
So collaboration, not just OEM logistics provider, but between the providers themselves, that will be essential. Johannes.
So I think first of all, we need to really find ways to precisely calculate, to report, and then to reduce the emissions. So it's, in the end, it's almost or pretty hard to reduce supply chain emissions to zero. So offsetting will play a key role as well. And I totally agree with the Renatas. If we want to achieve those ambitious targets, it's really key that we all as an industry work together to achieve those goals.
Great. Well, I want to thank both of you, Johannes Koch from ICL, Renatas Slenderis from Fracht, for your insight and sharing and speaking to me this afternoon as well. I think we covered some really interesting ground. Lots more of discussion to come off the back of that, but heartfelt thanks to both of you. And again, thanks to the audience for paying attention here and staying with us. We're going to take a short break here, but we've got plenty more coming up this afternoon at 3:45 European time. We're looking at risk management, including the speakers from Hella and a number of expert supply chain providers. We're going to close out the day at 4:45 European time, Central European time, looking at your favorite topic, semiconductor shortages. We've got some excellent experts who can talk to us about the lessons to learn. So there's a lot more to come, and that's before we even talk about tomorrow. So thanks again to our panelists today, this afternoon. We'll see you back here in about a half an hour.